And at the end of the day, probably a year or so down the road, there's really nothing to show for the talk that was had. This is not a talk shop. It's about transactions, 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 and doing deals. Talk will be at a minimum. There'll be 28 boardroom sessions where we'll be looking at $40 billion worth of businesses that cover 61 projects around the continent. We initially had $208 billion worth of projects on the platform. We've curated these down to 61 projects that amount to about $40 billion. These will be under review in the boardroom sessions, and then another $28 billion worth of projects will be on what we call a gallery walk. In other words, these will not be boardroom sessions. These will be opportunities to showcase these businesses that are not yet at bankability to prospective investors. But I think the third thing that really sets the Africa Investment Forum apart from anyone else, this is the very first time in the history of investment on the continent where multilateral investment institutions such as the World Bank, EBRD, the African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank are all coming together onto one platform to de-risk and co-guarantee projects.
The UK government is set to announce that foreign nationals living abroad will now be allowed to join Britain's armed forces. Currently, citizens from Commonwealth countries can only join if they have lived in the UK for 5 years. In a bid to recruit more servicemen and women to the Army, Navy and Air Force, the Ministry of Defence is lifting this rule. A report found earlier this year says the armed forces is short of 8,200 soldiers. The changes to recruitment rules will mean that people from Commonwealth countries, including Nigeria, Kenya, India and Australia, will be considered for roles even if they have never lived in Britain. Joining us now is our London Bureau Chief, Ayo Johnson, to tell us more on this. Hello, Ayo.
Hi. Yes, the British government is very keen to attract foreigners, especially that of the those from Africa, those from Asia, people who are part of the Commonwealth, and this exercise is clearly an action in that regard. But I think many people are saying that the British government is desperate, its army is not as functioning as it should be, and of course this is an opportunity for them to be able to raise it up the profile and get much needed soldiers to join their ranks. So for many others, they are very concerned that they are targeting third world individuals who do not have a choice, many who are looking for better opportunities, and we see this as a ticket or a direction to a British passport of some description. But ultimately, the British government, as they've announced today, is very keen to recruit those from the Commonwealth to attract them to the Army, the Navy and the Air Force.
Move comes at an interesting moment, Ayo, especially as Britain prepares to leave the EU and with immigration still towards the top of the political agenda. What does the government stand to achieve with this?
Well, for them, it's a win for them. They think that with them, Britain leaving Brexit, leaving the European Union, they need to look elsewhere to step up their recruitment process, which is required. They're not getting that domestically. The British people are not joining the numbers that they would wish. And of course, this is an opportunity for them to work closely with those from the third world, especially that of the Commonwealth. And they think that this is the opportunity that ensures that that relationship is robust. And of course, bringing them into the army, we already know that in the past they've made very strict rules, which meant that you've got to be living in the UK for at least 5 years. They're prepared to overlook that right now.
Okay, Ayo, for some of our viewers who may be interested in this, give us the full criteria for recruitment process.
Well, it's simple. You've got to be part of the Commonwealth. You've got to be wanting to join the army, the Air Force, or any other of the cadets out there. And with that in mind, provided you've got the ability to do so and you meet the requirement physically, the job's open to you.
Okay, Ayo Johnson, thanks for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Back here in Nigeria, the Academic Staff Union of Universities has resumed its industrial action nationwide. Union leaders say the decision became necessary due to the poor funding of public universities. Members were directed to withdraw their services immediately to effect a total and indefinite action.
The federal government seems to be under more pressure with many more issues to deal with other than minimum wage, as the Academic Staff Union of Universities has resumed its suspended nationwide industrial action. According to union leaders, the grounds for the renewed strike action remains underfunding of public universities across the country. Members were directed to withdraw their services immediately to begin a protest that's intended to be total and indefinite.
ASU, at its NEC meeting of 3rd and 4th November 2018 at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, Futa, resolved to resume the nationwide strike action. It suspended in September 2017 with immediate effect from 4th November 2018.
Once again, those that will eventually bear the brunt of this action are already showing signs of frustration.
I am not feeling happy because of the strike. We are studying exam and we are left behind. Many rich men has money to send their children abroad. I ask federal government to consider our situation.
So my prayer right now is that the strike should just find resolution to it, and that the strike should not hold, because I don't know, because staying at home is not really very a good thing for me.
Many had hoped it will not come to this. Students studying at the Taraba State University make an appeal to the federal government.
This will affect our own academic calendar. Like now, over the years, as a student, I can tell you that we used to spend almost 4 months in a semester, unlike other institutions that at most they can just spend like 2 months and then, let me say 2 weeks, then they will not have their own exams. So I call on the government, especially Mr. Buhari himself, if he must come back for the second tenure, then he must consider our own education first as his own priority, because we are the leaders of tomorrow.
Always strike, always strike. I don't know what is going on. Now look at us. So many of us is today that they are fully resuming to this school, and now we are still going back to strike today, which is very, very unfortunate.
In its usual practice, the leadership of ASU at the University of Ilorin, Kwara State, says it will not be part of the industrial action.
Still to come on the program. At least 79 people, mostly school children, have been kidnapped in the city of Bamenda in northwest Cameroon. Please stay with us.